There is a silent moment between breathing and thinking, a gap so subtle that the mind rarely notices it. In that interval, everything seems suspended. The past carries no weight, the future holds no pressure, and the present requires no explanation. It is there, in that thread of eternity between two thoughts, that life reveals itself in its purest form. Yet almost no one remains there. We flee from the insecurity of the moment as if escaping an abyss. We seek certainties, plans, structures, as if truth could be built with bricks of control. And yet, the paradox is clear. The more we try to protect ourselves from uncertainty, the more insecure we become. We live in a civilization that confuses security with stability, and stability with life. But life has never been stable. From the first heartbeat to the final breath, everything moves. The river does not fear the curve because it is the curve. Only man fears what is to come because he believes himself to be something separate from the flow that carries him. And that is where the tension begins, this restlessness disguised as a search for spirituality, success, love, or salvation. We want to stop the wind, define the undefined, hold on to what exists only as it moves. It is the drama of a species trying to negotiate with mystery. Observe how we live, every gesture calculated, every word measured, every emotion hidden. We try to predict the unpredictable, control the uncontrollable, and call it wisdom. But what we call prudence is often just fear dressed as virtue. We fail to see that insecurity is not a flaw in life, it is life's essence. The expanding universe, the pulsing atom, the birth of a star, the falling of a leaf, all vibrate in uncertainty. Security is merely a temporary pause in the dance, a necessary illusion so the game can continue. Yet we were taught to seek solid ground, not open sea. From childhood, we learn that everything will be all right, but no one explains what that means. And so we grow up chasing that ghost, the day when everything will finally be in order. The perfect job, the ideal love, the healthy body, the peaceful mind. But the closer we get to those promises, the more fragile they become. What we call peace is merely an interval between two worries. What we call control is a sandcastle undone by time. True wisdom is born when we realize that insecurity is the price of freedom. When there is no ground, there is flight. When there are no guarantees, there is discovery. The conditioned mind fears this open space because nothing in it is fixed, not even identity itself. But it is precisely in that unknowing that the miracle happens. It is there that the human being, stripped of certainties, becomes truly alive. Life is an ocean of impermanence, and we are waves trying to be solid. We try to freeze movement, name the infinite, turn mystery into a manual. Yet every time we define what life is, we kill a little of it, because mystery cannot be reduced to formulas, nor can faith be turned into a guarantee. True faith, if it can be called that, is trust without proof. It is surrendering to the unknown, not out of ignorance, but out of wisdom. And that is terrifying, because to trust is to allow oneself to fall. It is to release the edge of the river and let the current carry you, not knowing where it will lead. The fear is not in the falling, but in not knowing what comes next. It is that fear that fuels religions of salvation, systems of control, promises of eternal life. The man who fears the void invents heaven to endure it. And perhaps there is nothing wrong with that, except when we forget that heaven is now, that eternity is the very moment we keep avoiding. If you look closely, you'll see that everything beautiful is born of insecurity. Music exists because silence is not permanent. Art flourishes because the artist never knows what will emerge from the next brushstroke. Love is profound precisely because it can end. It is the risk that gives meaning to surrender. Yet we spend our lives trying to love without risk, create without error, live without dying. We forget that impermanence is not the enemy of beauty, it is its creator. Have you noticed how the mind tries to anticipate the now? While the body breathes, it's always one step ahead, imagining what could go wrong, what needs to be done, what is still missing. It is like a paranoid guard who never sleeps, believing it can prevent the inevitable. But the mind was never made to control life, only to observe it, to play with it, to understand it. When it tries to become master of the flow, it turns into a tyrant, and that is why we suffer, not from lack of security, but from lack of trust in the very flow that keeps us alive. The wisdom of insecurity is not resignation, it is conscious surrender. It is the recognition that the search for stability is a sophisticated form of resistance. It is understanding that what we call a problem is often just life-demanding movement. When everything feels uncertain, it is because something within us is trying to be born. And birth always hurts because it destroys the comfort of the old. But what follows is life in its purest state, wild, unpredictable, luminous. In the end, insecurity is just another name for freedom. And freedom is not comfort, it is vertigo. It is walking without a map and still moving with confidence. Because somewhere deep, perhaps in the very heart of the mystery, we already know that the river knows the way, even when we don't know how to swim. And there comes a moment when the mind grows tired of fighting the inevitable, when the body feels before even understanding that life has never been under control, and that this is the best news one could receive. For it is at this point of surrender, when plans dissolve, that freedom begins. Not the freedom that is earned through effort, but the one that has always been present, merely veiled by fear. The fear of falling, the fear of losing, the fear of not being enough. But what does enough mean in a universe that knows no fixed measures? The sun doesn't ask if it shines too brightly. The sea doesn't doubt its own strength. The flower doesn't compare itself to the mountain. Everything simply is. Only man lives between should and could, enslaved by an image of himself that never completes. We try to be good, wise, spiritual, but deep down we just want to feel safe. We want to ensure that pain will have meaning, that love will last, that death will not be the end. And in this effort to control the mystery, we lose the mystery itself. Insecurity is not the enemy, it is the doorway to what is real. Think for a moment. Every time something deeply transformative happened in your life, it was preceded by uncertainty. The first love, the first job, the unexpected change, the loss that pulled the ground from beneath you. None of it came with guarantees. All of it was born from the unknown, and it was the unknown that made you grow. The mind seeks stability, but the soul seeks expansion. And expansion is movement, risk, the crossing of fog without a map. That is why insecurity is the secret language of the universe saying, trust. But to trust is not to close your eyes and hope everything will work out. It is to open your eyes and realize that working out has never had a defined shape. It is to see that life does not happen to you, but as you. The river never asks where it ends, it simply flows. And if it finds stones along the way, it doesn't resent them, it dances around them. True trust is this dance with the unpredictable. It is the recognition that nothing needs to be guaranteed in order to be sacred. Suffering arises when we demand from the moment something it cannot give. Permanence. We want to freeze what is alive, to preserve the scent of the flower without accepting that it withers. But we fail to see that it is precisely the withering that gives the scent its meaning. Time does not destroy beauty, it reveals it, because without impermanence, nothing would have value. The kiss is intense only because it might be the last. The night is beautiful only because the dawn will come. Life is precious only because it ends. And paradoxically, when we accept the end disappears. Death becomes part of life. Fear transforms into curiosity, and the now ceases to be an interval between past and future, and becomes the eternal itself. The present moment is the only place where infinity reveals itself. yet almost no one visits it, for we are always busy planning the next one. Modern man is an expert at running from the present. He carries in his pocket a small, luminous oracle, consulted hundreds of times a day, searching in it for what can only be found in silence. He looks at screens for the security he lost within himself, and the more information he gathers, the less wisdom he finds. Because wisdom is not about accumulating answers, it's about dissolving questions. It is realizing that there is no one controlling the universe, because the controller and the universe are the same thing. Insecurity, then, is the reflection of a misunderstanding. We believe ourselves to be isolated entities, sailing on a hostile sea of external forces. But what if the sea and the sailor are the same movement? What if the fear of sinking is simply the fear of recognizing that there was never a boat at all? The self that seeks safety is a fragile construct, a shadow trying to hold on to the sun. Awakened consciousness sees that there is nothing to hold on to, because there was never any separation. Nothing to hold on to, because there was never any separation. When this is understood, fear doesn't disappear, it transforms. It becomes a reminder that we are still alive, that the heart still feels, that experience still pulses. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is the decision not to let it steer the ship. The wisdom of insecurity doesn't promise a life without pain, but a life not defined by pain. It is seeing suffering as part of the melody, not as a flaw in the composition. There is a kind of serenity that doesn't come from order, but from the acceptance of chaos, a peace that doesn't depend on calm, but on presence. When you allow yourself to be part of the movement becomes harmony. What once seemed a threat reveals itself as dance. The falling rain is not punishment, it is renewal. The night covering the landscape is not an end, it is rest. The void that frightens is the same space from which all that is new is born. And when thought tries to return, because it always does, you can smile and say, "Ah, you again." Because the mind does not need to be eliminated, only understood. It is a wonderful instrument, but not the conductor. When it serves the heart, there is music. When it tries to command the mystery, there is noise. Look around you. Nothing is fixed. Clouds change, sounds dissolve, faces age, ideas die. And yet, something remains not as form, but as presence. That something is what you are before the name, before the story, before the search. Insecurity loses its power when you recognize that you have never been a person trying to survive amid chaos, but the cosmos itself playing the game of self-discovery through a human form. And then, the fear of death becomes the fear of waking up. Because what dies has never been what you are, only what you believed yourself to be. The wave disappears, but the ocean remains. The flame goes out, but the fire continues. When you understand this, insecurity becomes celebration. The unknown ceases to be a threat and becomes home. In the end, if there is such a thing, the wisdom of insecurity is simply this: to be here completely, without guarantees, without safety, without trying to hold on to what is already you. It is to rest in impermanence, to trust in mystery, and to see that emptiness is not lack, but fullness. For the universe owes you no explanations, it offers you participation, and that, as uncertain as it may seem, is all that has ever existed.